Brothers and sisters, we've all turned up the radio to hear Brother Jimmy Lakey, from coast to coast and shore to shore. Now raise your voice. Oh, let us all Jimmy Lakey, get out of bed. Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice. Jimmy Lakey, Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey.
Oh, top of the morning to everybody. How's everybody? It's Friday. Hallelujah. Everybody, it's Friday. Are you excited? I hope you're excited. You should be excited. If you're not excited, well, you should be. The 8th day of August, year of our Lord, 2025, the day the Lord has made. You're in front of a speaker, a television, or a monitor, and a telephone, or whatever, and I'm in front of a microphone and a camera. That's the way the good Lord intended this day to start, and you're welcome for that. Glad to be here with you on the program. My headphones are a little tangled up here this morning. Somebody messaged me one time and said, why don't you have those high-dollar, fancy-ass headphones? Well, because I actually like these better, and I don't like the over-the-ear ones either because I think it rubs your hair off is what happened. That's what happened to my hairline, is that I wear those headphones for long enough, and suddenly I got a little thin up there, so I said no more over the head headphones. So anyway, good to have all of you here on the program. It is a Friday edition of the show. I'm going to talk about social media a bit today. I'll get to the question of the day coming up in a moment. It has to do with your kids and social media. We will talk about that. Stacy jumps right in. There was something that I have on my show sheet because I got a text alert about this from my app. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the 75th anniversary of Whataburger. And I would like to say to all of us, you should commemorate this appropriately today. A 75th anniversary of Whataburger today. It should be a national holiday. Unfortunately, it's not. And Whataburger, of course, the great Texas treasure that serves delicious burgers. And we want to just say happy birthday. Should we pause, Delilah? And should we sing we should. She says absolutely not. So we will not sing corporately at this moment for Whataburger, but it is under consideration. I will take that under consideration that we will have a happy birthday moment for Whataburger. Anyway, good to have you here on the program. By the way, Whataburger, if you're watching the show as I wish you happy birthday before we get some news of the day and ICE and Tennessee, who's running for governor. James Carville's gone bat crap crazy, which is, I think he's always been bat crap crazy. So we'll talk about all of that. But before we pass too far along, Whataburger, if you're listening to the program, I know you've come to Colorado. I know you have ventured here, but I've never been to a Colorado Whataburger. You know why? Because all of them are like in a 5-mile radius in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from me. So it's easier. I do my Whataburger when I fly to Texas, when I'm back at the motherland. So anyway, Whataburger, if you're listening, knock it off. We got a lot of development in the area where producer Chad and I happen to live, and we would love to have a Whataburger up in the northern area of Colorado. That's all we can say. Thank you. And it would be, we would sing to you if you had a Whataburger closer by, but instead you put them all down in Colorado Springs. And I'm not sure exactly why they chose to saturate one market. Even the crazy California people that run, well, they're actually great people, In-N-Out. They've spread their In-N-Out burgers all over Colorado. So at least that I-25 corridor. Anyway, good morning to everybody. How's everybody doing? Everybody's happy? The day the Lord has made. I asked this question yesterday and I had somebody say, Jimmy, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And I said, what would you do in a heartbeat? I didn't know. Because people ask me after the show, they said, what you talk about today? Who's on the show today? And producer Chad can tell you, anybody that knows me can tell me, I say, I don't know. I've done this long enough, and it's been so many years in radio and doing the stuff that once you're done, you're done. You purge it from your head, and you move on. I remember we were filming the television show Frontier Taste and Tales on a daily basis, or we come back from filming an episode or there's filming time, and we'd come back, and the next day they're like, hey, remember yesterday when you said, I said, I don't remember anything. You were just on the show hosting it, and you don't remember it. I didn't remember it. I was hosting a television show, but once the show was done, and once the show was done, once the radio program was done, I was out of there. I didn't have time. Listen, this is very high-end real estate up here in my head. Between my ears is very pricey, and so I have to evict thick thoughts out of there pretty quickly. So anyway, somebody asked me, would you do? I would do it in a heartbeat. And I said, what would you do? And they said, you said that Kristi Noem had lowered the age limits on ICE, and I'll go be an ICE agent. And I said, you can barely shuffle across the floor on most days. Watch this guy. But anyway, no, I had a friend say they'd be an ICE agent. So if you would, that's a great question right there. Who'd be an ICE agent now that they have lowered the age limits? And we talked about it on the show yesterday. I would do it as long as I get to jump out of that Penske van and go hunt down the bad hombre. Ice, ice, baby, it says on the screen. I hope some of you were singing that in your head yesterday as well. Anybody, we'll see, what is it? James Carville. I've been following James Carville. James Carville is one of these crazed characters on television that I'm not sure he's a leader in the Democrat Party. I think he has a podcast. I think he has a role to play out there, but I don't think anybody listens to James Carville. And James Carville is one of those, and this is kind of a pretext of a question of the day. It's not an official question of the day, but if James Carville did not get airplay on Fox News reruns or reels, Carville was still out there. It also takes me to The View and some of the CNN excerpts that cable news channels have gotten in the habit of building entire segments, if not entire shows, around what other people are saying and therefore making it about them. And I disagree with that. If Rachel Madcow or The View did not get views on Fox News or the Sean Hannity show or Tucker or I don't Tucker's off Fox, so that doesn't matter. Jesse, if they didn't get the views there, I don't think maybe we'll be watching them. Well, I'm going to do a James Carville story, and I apologize that most of you would have never even known that James Carville was sucking oxygen this morning had I not mentioned his name. But it's an important one because First Lady Melania Trump shared an X post in triumph on Thursday after Democrat strategist James Carville retracted claims that were disputed by her lawyer. Old crazy, back crap crazy. He got alcohol probably on the breath. I don't know. I'm just assuming. He opened his latest episode of the Politics War Room podcast with a legal note, abandoning his usual folksy and style for a more serious tone. And in a very serious tone where he didn't sound like a drunken Cajun. That's my assessment. In last week's podcast episode, we spoke with Jed Lagoon. After the episode, we received a letter from Melania Trump's lawyer. He took issue with our title of one of those YouTube videos from that episode and a couple of comments I made about the First Lady. We took a look at what they complained about, and we took down the video, edited out the comments from the episode. I also take back those statements. Melania Trump shared a screenshot of the apology above the transcript, The Epstein Connection. This was the title of the video, The Epstein Connection, Trump and Melania. So the Democrats are so crazed and they can't jump on and glom onto excitement behind Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or crazy Bernie Sanders or Jasmine Crockett that they're obsessed on this thing about Epstein and Donald Trump. And I think the story we know about Epstein and Donald Trump is the story. And if Joe Biden and his demented, crazy, vindictive Justice Department had thought that there was evidence of Donald Trump and Epstein Island, don't you think among the 96 charges they brought against Donald Trump, they would have also wagged that one out because that would have been quite salacious? It's just the Democrats trying to get ground. They can't defend their party. They can't defend their heroes. They know that Barry Hussein Obama has gone basically AWOL because he's irrelevant in the party. They have no true leadership. And so they're going after a story and trying to tie Donald Trump to a story that they've had the keys to the kingdom of for a couple of decades, and they did nothing with it. The Democrats trying to connect Donald Trump, Melania to Epstein Island is really just a desperate ruse of distraction because these people have absolutely no clue and no rudder and no oar heading in the right direction. So anyway, Carville pulled it down and apologized for the comments. And rather than getting his Cajun drunk ass sued, he decided to apologize to Melania Trump, and Melania Trump retweeted that. But it brings me back to kind of a subtext question of the day. Do you think it's good that people in media even give, again, this was something Melania Trump brought up herself, but do you think it's good whenever I know Jesse Waters. I watch some of the interviews or some of the monologues that Jesse does. And Jesse's got a lot of flack from his fans because Jesse is always giving platform, meaning repeats or meaning replays to what's her name? Rosie O'Donnell, who has abandoned this country and headed off to Ireland, and she's putting out these crazy, you think as much money as Rosie probably made in television and entertainment and movies, that she could figure out a freaking camera angle. Just because producer Chad and I sometimes have me looking like I'm in a hostage video. Listen, we didn't make millions and bazillions of dollars in television as a Hollywood star. You would think that old Rosie could pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, could you fix my lighting? Could I not get right up on the camera? I mean, could you do something better, Rosie? You're better. Well, you're not better than that, but she doesn't. But if Jesse Waters did not play Rosie O'Donnell clips, would anybody know that Rosie O'Donnell had left the country? Would anybody know that her hot air balloon bag that she is is mouthing off about Donald Trump? No one would know what these do. And so I guess that's a question. Do you like it when hosts like myself give you excerpts about Rosie or The View or James Carville? Or should we let sleeping dogs and ugly dogs lie and not repeat those things? I'm just asking. Maybe it should be done more limited. That's just kind of a subtext question of the day. Does conservative media, whether streamed or broadcast, does it give more credence and does it give more impact to these people by replaying and retweeting things that most people would never have seen? It's a really interesting question because sometimes CNN, if you look at the numbers, or MSNBC, their viewership has gone so far down. They are so far down in the keister that you put them on one Fox News show or you put them on one national radio show and they have immediately hit more eyeballs or earballs than what you had on their entire impact on the stream. So it's a great question of what level of moderation should conservative media do before they ever retweet something about James Carville. James Carville, I don't believe, is a relevant party person of the Democrat Party. I don't think there's anybody that's in power or going to be in power in the next election cycle that's going to go seek James Carville's advice. I think what it is you got a bunch of Gen Xers like myself that James Carville used to be a big deal back in the days of Willie Jeff Clinton, and so they continue to perpetuate the Willie Jeff Clinton stories, or excuse me, the James Carville stories, because he was relevant to us. But I don't think he's relevant to anybody else. It's kind of like if you ask my son or his friends or the generation even younger than him or the kids younger than him about the great impact of Barry Obama. They don't give a rat's patootie about who Barry Obama was. They were, at the very least, in early elementary school, maybe not even born yet, when Barack Obama was actually influential politician. So the Democrat Party that we think of says, is Barack Obama going to come to the rescue? But you look at the youngsters out there, Barack Obama is just an old geezer that used to run the party, and they think that Barack Obama is old blood, but you and I think Barack Obama is kind of the fresh blood of the Democrat Party. So it's all about age, it's all about perspective, and it's also all about the question, do you think that media should really dial down how much they retweet, replay, repost comments by James Carville or The View or anybody, Rachel Maddow or anything on CNN? Do we sometimes help them get their message out in an attempt to say we're trying to show how crazy they are, but we're also letting them have views and likes and people start to follow them, and instead of just leaving them out on the island of irrelevance where they probably belong. All right, good to have all of you here on the program. We got Jeff Dornick coming up on the program. We're going to talk about a law that they passed in Australia. And it's kind of a law, but it's not really that enforceable. And they have decided that kids under the age of 16 should not have social media access. Social media access banned under the age of 16. Now, there's a story that I got a lot of the details of it from, that the headline is, the more you try to, is written by Leo Puglisi, of The Guardian from Australia. Australia vows to ban teens from accessing YouTube through their own account. It's not going to stop harmful content in the slightest. The more government tries to restrict social media use, the more young people will find ways to get around it. And he basically says that they used to allow in Australia you to have your own YouTube account because a lot of schools would require the kids to log in for classes and videos and learning. Well, turns out that you get on the YouTube, a lot of the kids were venturing their way down some pretty interesting websites and video channels, even pornography, and they've decided that they're going to have to ban it. And so the UK has done this. They had the Online Safety Act making global headlines over the past week. And it's now they're trying to enforce it. So you got the UK Safety Act, you got Australia, and they're banning kids or attempting to regulate social media so that kids can't have access to it. Let me ask you, at what age do you believe that a child should have access to social media? Now, having raised as a dad, a kid through most of his teenage years, a single papa, well, I raised him his whole life, but in the teenage years, I remember the pressure that he put on me even for a cell phone. And I held out for the cell phone for a while, and I believe I gave him an old rundown, pretty stripped down cell phone at about the age of, I'd have to ask him, 10 or 11, 12. It was one of those things just so I could kind of keep up and he could call home when needed. But it didn't take long. By the time he's in middle school and all the way through high school, of course, the schools also was handing out iPads. That was part of the curriculum. Everybody got an iPad and everybody had access. So even if he didn't have a phone, he had full access to his iPad, to the Googles or the interweb and all the things that he could do on that. The question I have for you as a question of the day is, what age whether you're a parent now or if you can go back in time, what age is appropriate to give a child a cell phone, and what age is appropriate for a child to be on social media? Australia has tried to make it that you can't be on the social media accounts until you're 16. It's hard to enforce because they can go in as a guest or they can create a fake account. There's no ID verification. But if it's an account that's registered as someone under 16 as opposed to under 18, they don't have access in Australia to social media. And they're trying to build online safety. A lot of folks say that's really wrought and fraught with all sorts of problems and loopholes, and it is. But maybe it's a step in the right direction. What age, this is our question of the day today, what age is appropriate? Is it appropriate for your child, your teen, your elementary kid, whatever age you want to give them, what age is it appropriate for them to have a cell phone? The secondary question is, what age is it appropriate if they have a cell phone and you can call daddy or call mommy when you need to? But which age do they get the phones and start loading up all the social media apps? Which age is appropriate for a child to be on social media? Now, I remember my son was a senior in high school, I believe. I don't think he had gone off to college. Maybe he's even a junior. He was still in the heart of this age group, 16, 17, 18 years old. And I told him, I said, there's a news story that people think that kids should be on social media until a certain age and maybe not even have a cell phone until maybe they're 16. And I don't remember if there's a context of the cell phone or the context of social media. And I asked my son, I said, what would you think of that? I had some discussion with some friends. My kid's not getting a cell phone till they're 14. My child's not going to be on social media. I'll check the content until they're 16. I had been in a discussion. We talked about it on the radio show, the old radio show. And I asked my son, what do you think of that? And you know what my son said as a teenager? He actually said, I agree. That's probably not a bad idea. So here it is, my son who had a cell phone access probably too early. I probably wasn't as strict enough on the social media. My kid is like a lot of the kids who walks around like this all the time, and one day hopefully doesn't get hit by a bus stepping into the street trying to check their phone out. But there's been some states in America that have tried to ban cell phone, regulate cell phone usage. It's really hard to enforce. But as a parent, I ask you this question. What age do you give your kid a cell phone? If you had a kid today, what age would you give the kid a cell phone? And what age should they have access to social media? There's Rich jumping in on the Facebook page, popping up on the chat room's screen right there. It says, Australia, good luck with that law. Missouri banned all cell phone usage during school hours for students. It's going to be interesting how they enforce it. That's another one. Schools, kids are heading back to school. A lot of teachers, and I don't blame them, are sick and tired of the kids just playing games and not being able to monitor. And so you're supposed to put them in a locker. They're giving them bags and you put them in, and they're forcing kids to take their phones out. Now, I know some parents that don't like that, saying if there's a school shooter, if there's a problem, I want my kid to be able to call me. Or if there's a rogue teacher, I want them to. I understand there's a balance here, But what age is it appropriate to give a kid a cell phone? What age did you allow your child to have access to a cell phone? And which age, maybe you got them a cell phone, but that doesn't mean they have to have access to all the social sites. You can get them a dumb phone, not a smartphone. If you get them a dumb phone, they're not going to have all those apps and things that you're not aware of, or even be able to go to the dirty places of YouTube. So give me your thoughts on that. That is your question of the day today. Carville's an old school Dixiecrat, gets rolled out to distract us. Jim, that's a great point. He is old school. He's an older voice in the older mindset in the Democrat Party. My problem with James Carville, I think he rolls himself out, and I think nobody in the Democrat Party pays him any mind. I don't think he has any influence. It's just him doing a ramble in front of a microphone. I don't even think he has a scheduled time. I think he just goes on when the spirit moves him, if you will. He goes out there, and I have to say, I have to say that I don't think they roll him out to distract us. I think we let him distract us. No one would give a rat's butt. Cleaned up my language there. Thank you very much. No one would give a rat's patootie if James Carville. We're the ones rolling these people out there. The View, it's a distraction. Would anybody know what the View said if we didn't play it in conservative media? But Jim, good point. He is a distraction. He is an old school Dixiecrat. Maybe they rolled him out for distraction. Maybe they just know, hey, let's put this old crazed jackwagon out there, and Republicans will make hay off this thing, and they'll cover that story. Maybe they know who we are. RJ says this, age 12 for the cell phone, but no access to the internet, just able to make and receive calls. Now, here's another question for you. I love taking advantage of modern day technology. I think it's great. I don't think we should shy away from it. But isn't it amazing that you and I, if you're a Gen Xer like myself, you would wake up on a Saturday morning, do your chores, help pops around, do whatever, you get yelled at for not holding the flashlight still or whatever. It's flashbacks. I'm sorry, it's PTSD. So I remember those days. And then you take off on your bicycle, and you just knew to be home before the street lights came on. And if you're lucky, you stopped by someone's house, turned on the water, and drank out of the water hose. That was my generation, right? That's what we did. And there was no thought, you at 12, I want my kid to be able to make a call. No, at 12, if you get hurt, somebody better ride their bike fast enough to go back and tell your parents that you are hurt and you're laying in the woods probably getting eaten by wolves by now. So it is interesting that at age 12, and I don't disagree with that, age 12, give them a call so they can call you if they have an emergency or need something. I don't disagree with that, but isn't it amazing that previous generations for centuries have survived without being able to check in with their parents every 30 seconds at the age of 12 or the age of 11? I text when my son and I were texting yesterday. We text a lot. And I enjoy it. He's a great kid, and love the kid to death. But we were texting, and I thought, man, I'm so glad for this technology, because it used to be you had to think of 17 and 18-year-olds that went off to war, no cell phone, WW2, Vietnam, Korea, wherever they went off to. And if they wanted to communicate with someone, they couldn't send a quick text. They had to get down with pen and paper and send a letter back to mom, dad, or the fiance or the wife. They had to send a letter back. So anyway, there's your question of the day. What age should a child get a cell phone? And what age should a child be given access to social media? I'm not necessarily talking laws in a state. I don't think those are really enforceable. But as a parent, as the caregiver of a child, what age should your child get a cell phone? If you didn't have a child, didn't have cell phones back when your child was around, if you were a parent now, what age would you let them have a cell phone? Which age would you allow them to have a social media account? All right, nice to have you here. Want to remind you, Friday, September the 5th is our golf tournament. It is the big time 9th annual golf tournament for Rivers Promise. If you haven't registered, please get registered soon. We have extended that flash sale. It's up on the website now, and when I say extended, we just haven't gone in and taken it down. I think it's set to auto expire here soon. So you can still get a discounted registration. That is up at riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org. And if you can't be there, that's okay. Well, it's not okay. I might forgive you, but I have to say that if you can't be there, you can still sponsor the golf tournament. We have some whole sponsorships and other levels of sponsorships still available. All right, coming up on the program, we are going to talk with Jeff Dornick a little bit about this Australia ban on social media for kids. We'll get to that story as well. Has anybody followed the story? I don't think it's gotten the media coverage that it should, But of all the information that Tulsi Gabbard is putting out on this Russia hoax, and there's now a grand jury investigating it and finding out who's going to have charges filed against him. I think somebody's going to get charges. A lot of folks say Brennan. I think Clapper's exposable. Just reading what I read, I'm not a lawyer. Comey has some culpability. I don't think you're going to get Barry Hussein Obama, but we've heard that the Clintons have been called in to testify in front of the House Oversight Committee. So there's at least going to be some reputational fallout for some of these people for their behaviors. And at least I think the truth will be told, and I hope the media will tell it. Well, something that Tulsi Gabbard put out that I think is not getting a lot of information, a lot of coverage, is that Tulsi Gabbard has basically said James Clapper was involved in this, and maybe he's going to get charged for the Russia hoax. But this is not his first hoax using intelligence to drive national policy. Have you heard this story? There's an interview. I could post it up. You can find it at the Gateway Pundit. Let me just read the part of the story. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard accused former Obama DNI, Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, of being a serial political manipulator, exposing that the Russian collusion hoax was not his first rodeo when it came to deceiving people. Anybody remember the weapons of mass destruction thing? The narrative there that got us into a war in Iraq that lasted forever and benefited the military-industrial complex and cost thousands and thousands of lives, and a lot of people still coming back, families damaged. I mean, it's just the whole is leaving Afghanistan. That whole thing was all sparred on during the George W. Bush administration by a claim of weapons of mass destruction. And if you remember, we almost got basically a declaration of war, some variation thereof from the Congress. Remember, Colin Powell went before the hallowed halls of Congress, and he'd go before the hallowed halls of Congress and talk about the WMDs that were out there. A lot of us grew up in this. A lot of us at that time were either college age or heading towards college age, and there was talk of a draft, and here we're going to get in this war, and it was all about the fervor of September the 11th, and he's got weapons of mass destruction. Anybody remember the weapons of mass destruction claim? The weapons of mass destruction narrative, it refers, if you're just maybe forgot, it refers to the false claims made by the U.S. government, primarily under W. Bush and his administration, that Saddam Hussein's regime possessed active weapons of mass destruction programs. They had chemical, biological, even nuclear weapons, and we had to go in and destroy the WMDs. And if you didn't like George W. Bush, they'd send Dick Cheney out there. Then you had Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld out there. The CIA director was George Tenet at the time. Even Condoleezza Rice were out there, and they were in the very center of the orbit of W. Bush, pushing the WMD case. Secretary of State Colin Powell famously presented the WMD case before the United Nations in February of 2003. So he had satellites and intercepts that later turned out to either be deeply flawed or outright false. Well, at the time, James Clapper was the director of National Geospatial Intelligence. He was responsible for the satellite imagery. Bottom line is, Tulsi Gabbard, in her revelations, basically said the whole hoax about world weapons of mass destruction, WMD, that entire thing was another thing that James Clapper birthed up, like he did the hoax of the Russia collusion thing. It was James Clapper who was responsible for the WMD destruction. My fingerprints are one of the quotes from a book called Facts and Fears at GW is Clapper himself said this: "My fingerprints are on the infamous National Intelligence Assessment of October the 2002." So he's basically admitted it, but Tulsi Gabbard's gone a step further and said, is this just another thing of Clapper trying to drive national policy and get us into war and get us into bad situations, and or affect who the president is, or affect national policy, doing it from a position of power in the National Intelligence Office. So the grand conspiracy, as your screen says, continues. The grand conspiracy continues, and it seems as if Clapper out there is not just he was involved in the weapons of mass destruction. Think of the biggest hoaxes that you've been told. I mean, we're learning that it was a hoax for 60 years, but most of us already suspected that Lee Harvey Oswald was a single shooter on a grassy knoll. The new documents show that no, there was a more grand conspiracy with the intelligence agencies against John F. Kennedy in his assassination that happened in 1963 in Dallas. That was a grand conspiracy. They lied to us, even though we had suspicions and enough hints. Well, now we're finding out that we learned later that the weapons of mass destruction, because they never found the WMDs, and some people thought they had been moved to Syria or moved somewhere else, and that's a possibility. But the bottom line is they never found the WMDs and found out that Powell was presenting imagery that was false or wrong in front of Congress because he was given it by Clapper. And yet Clapper created spun this whole thing up. So it's interesting. This is something that should be covered, that this is not just us saying that these people are bad and have been doing very naughty things with their position of power and intelligence and the alphabet soup agencies. These people are bad, and they've been affecting policy and even costing American lives since 2002, 2003, because they were spinning up false information about weapons of mass destruction. Think about how our world and your generation, my generation, because we were affected by that as Gen Xers, that was a big deal. The WMD plea, that was a huge deal. And it was a big deal. We had cohorts. I've got friends that have served, veterans during that era, because they wanted to help fight for America after September the 11th, 2001. Then we had the WMDs. They got us in that forever war that lasted 20-something years. Listen, all of that was spun up by fake data, and Clapper was in the middle of that. This is one of the most important revelations, I believe, that's coming out from this from Tulsi Gabbard. You got to pay attention to that one. They're also investigating, we talked about this, Jack Smith, who was the prosecutor assigned to go after Donald Trump and raid Mar-a-Lago so that his dirty agents could go in there and look at the clothing drawers of Melania Trump and Barron Trump, because Jack Smith probably I don't know. You think, why you go through the ladies' underpants drawer, except that you're perverted and you're a corrupt cop. Jack Smith is being investigated as well. Clapper, we're learning it's not his first rodeo of manipulating intelligence to get America's policies affected. So I'm telling you, it's going to be interesting. Watch this whole thing. A grand jury is investigating it, and Clapper is not the first rodeo. And if any of you remember the weapons of mass destruction claim, ladies and gentlemen, you better remember it, because that all came from the head of Clapper as well. And the Russia hoax also came from the head of Clapper. So you have been played by your government so often, and one of the ways you've been played is the intelligence agencies, and Clapper has been at the center of that for a long time. All right, we have the question of the day. I'm going to go to my first guest of the morning. The question of the day is following Australia's lead. They've decided that if you're under the age of 16, that you should not have access to social media. Now, the policing of this and the enforcement of this is kind of difficult. It's not all that easy. That's not easy to enforce. Enforcement is not easy, but it's the thought that counts. So they say that kids should not have access to social media, YouTube specifically, if they're under the age of 16. And it brings up the question for all the platforms. Rumble, we have not heard from you this morning. Let's see, Twitter, if you're out there, let us know. The Instagram is live as well. So let's check. IG doesn't populate immediately inside of the chat room. We don't see all the we don't see counts from everybody, but we don't see comments from everyone, because we're on so many different platforms. But let me ask you, what age was appropriate to give your kid a cell phone? What age is it appropriate to give your kid access to social media? And Rich says, raising 7 kids, it always depended on why and what they needed it for. It changed with the younger kids, limited access though. Regardless, we are in a rural area with school functions and extracurricular activities. It's useful to be able to get a hold of them. So between 12 and 14, but again, limited access. Jim jumps in and says, kids can get a phone when they can pay for it with a job. That's probably good advice. It is convenient. Rich is right. It is convenient if you have a kid. And for me, I was a single papa, and I was the full taxi service. I was those busy teenage years. I was the I was the carpool. I was everything. So it was very convenient for him to have a cell phone. But I asked him when he was 16, 17, 18 years old if he thinks he probably should have been limited more, if that's to be a good law. And he said, yeah, that's probably a good idea that kids under 16 should not have access to some things online. Your thoughts? That's your question of the day. Based on the Australia story, kids are getting their butts banned from social media by the government of Australia. Hard to enforce, but do you like the thought of that? What do you say? Comment on all the platforms, hit enter. And when you do, most of those show up in the chat room, and producer Chad screens those and makes those available for all of us to read and all of us to see. By the way, one more quick thing. I just saw the title. Jimmy Lakey is my title. Producer Chad changes this every day. I'm playing pickleball. I've never played pickleball, producer Chad. You know this, and I should. People say I should play. One of our good friends plays pickleball. He's prolific, and he loves playing pickleball, and I should. Today is National Pickleball Day. So all of you pickleball warriors, today is National Pickleball Day. Enjoy it. I've heard it's like tennis, but different. It's like ping pong, but different. I don't know. I haven't played it. There's a lot of like indoor pickleball places and restaurants that are starting to open chains, national chains. There's one called Chicken and Pickle that serves chicken, and they have pickleball courts there. That's a national. There's one in the, I know there's one in Missouri where my son attends school. There's one, a couple in Colorado now. So it's a big deal, but today's National Pickleball Day. So if you're a pickleball player, go for it. And that's false statement. That's bad advertising. I'm playing pickleball. I'm not playing pickleball. I am hosting this show called Lakey Unleashed. All right, let's go to my first guest of the morning on this Friday, the day the Lord has made. By the way, if you're listening later in the day, thousands of ear holes will hear this show. We appreciate it, and make sure you go listen to it on the iHeartRadio app. That's what it's called. Yeah, the Spotify, the Apple Podcast. As soon as this show's over, it goes out to thousands of people in podcast form. But those of you watching live, we appreciate you as well. Jeff Dornick has been a guest of the program before. We bring him into the mix. He's waiting in the green room patiently, probably dreaming of playing pickleball. Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Good morning. I got to say, I've never played pickleball, so I couldn't even tell you how to play.
It's like tennis, but different, I think. There's like something called a kitchen and a ball, and the reason they named it pickleball, the people that invented it, their dog named Pickles kept taking the ball and running away. That's all I know about pickleball.
This sounds. I'm gonna have to learn that one. So
yeah, maybe we can go play pickleball together. You're the CEO of Pickaxe, a new social media platform, newer, I should say. And talk about Pickaxe, and then I want you to jump into this question about Australia, saying that the youngsters should not have access to social media unless they're 16 or older.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so like with everything we've got going on with Pickaxe, obviously we're a social media platform for those of you guys that aren't as familiar with us, but we're trying to be as free speech as we possibly can. So everything is constitutionally protected, free speech social media platform, but we're trying to find ways in order to connect people together more often, as well as working with creators to give them more direct access to their audience, help them to monetize, all that kind of stuff. So, so with everything that we're doing, like even in our initial founding of the platform, we were having to figure out, okay, how are we going to deal with, number one, how are we going to deal with people coming on internationally, but then also how are we going to deal with the whole kids thing. And so for us as a platform, we set the cutoff at 18 years old. So you have to be an adult in order to come onto the platform. One of my ideas eventually down the road would be to where we would allow kids or teens to come on the platform, but they would have to have like a sub account that would be connected to the parents' account, so that way the parents can always see everything that's happening within their child's account. I feel like that would be a decent workaround, but I think that the spirit of what Australia is trying to do specifically, it's good in theory, but also should the government be stepping in this fashion? That's my issue. For me, again, I'm very pro-America, pro-Constitution, pro-limited government and all that. And there's a lot of good things that I don't want the government involved in. I don't want the government involved in disciplining my kids when my kids, disobey me. I don't want the government stepping in and taking away my parental decisions. There could be all different kinds of reasons why maybe I would want my kid to, maybe be on social media at 15 instead of 16, but that should be my decision as a parent. And if you're allowing your kid at 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, I would say that's bad on you as a parent, but I don't necessarily think it's the government's job to come in and step in and basically mandate a particular, cutoff point. And so this is where we kind of come back to, do the ends justify the means? And I would argue that I don't think that the government should be stepping in this fashion, but also we probably shouldn't be allowing our kids to be on social media at a young age.
If you're listening on the podcast later in the program, you're not able to see the screen. Jeff Dornick is my guest. He's the founder and CEO of Pickaxe. Also got a book out called Following the Leader. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment. But Jeff Dornick, CEO of Pickaxe, Pickax, Pickaxe, new social media platform. Let me ask you on the... We have the world, and it started when they had the Trump derangement syndrome about this is fake news, this is false reporting, and Russia. All these hoaxes or all this fake news that goes out on the internet. As a founder of a CEO and as founder and CEO of a social media company, does that trouble you that people can use your platform or any platform to really spin up a narrative, maybe that's a propaganda piece by Clapper and the CIA about the Russia hoax? How do we prevent against that and to make sure that doesn't happen, where social media does not become a tool for government propaganda like the Russia hoax was?
Yeah, so I think it's, specifically when you're dealing with like the Russia hoax, you're dealing with the Hunter Biden laptop, you're dealing with a lot of these different kinds of things where the intelligence agencies, we know for a fact that they were involved in sending this information out there and getting it out there. But you also had them working in conjunction with the social media platforms and the tech companies in order to further push the narrative and then silence dissent and silence opposition. And so on Pickaxe, there's a couple different things that we're doing. Like, number one, we're not going to censor content. We're not, as a platform, our job isn't to do the research and figure out which thing is true and which thing is not true. Our job is to allow, if let's say there's a propaganda piece that goes out, we allow dissenting opinion freely, and we're going to find all different kinds of ways in order to allow more engagement with issues, and then that way it can be fact checked in real time by somebody else, and you can read this article, and maybe we'll make it to where you can reply with another article, and then you can kind of see the chain and say, oh well, I think this argument's better than this argument, and that whole thing. The problem that we're dealing with the intelligence agencies is they use very subversive tactics in order to use social media to their benefit. So number one, the obvious thing, obviously, they control mainstream media. So the mainstream media is going to push all the narratives that the government and the deep state and the establishment want them to push, as we saw with Russiagate and as we saw with Hunter Biden laptop and all fill in the blank with all the rest of the propaganda pieces. But then what a lot of the intelligence agencies will do is they actually run and operate bot farms, and so what they'll do is they'll go onto these social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter especially, and they will push a narrative with all these accounts that are basically run by a bot farm in order to push something to get it trending. And there's so many different stories that are clearly propaganda pieces, and you're wondering, where did all of this come from? And you go back to the initial posting, and it's all these random accounts that have no name, that 5 million numbers at the end of their username, and they're all pushing the exact same narrative until finally some conservative influencer or some lefty influencer picks it up and blasts it out for everybody, and then all of a sudden everybody thinks it's legitimate and credible. Well, what we're doing with Pickaxe specifically is we're making it to where if you do not have a verified account, which means that you are not who you say you are, then you're never going to be able to trend. You're never going to be able to game the system. You're never going to be able to game the algorithms or manipulate the system in order to use bots and subversive tactics in order to push a particular narrative. So if you can get somebody to write an article, that's fine. But guess what? Everybody else can also write a dissenting article or a dissenting piece and reply to it. To me, that's the free speech way of dealing with things. The problem that we had was we had all these big tech companies that they would step in on behalf of the intelligence agencies, push a particular narrative, and then silence any dissent or any questions that came up. And then so that's where we really have the problem, especially when it comes to propaganda.
The voice of Jeff Dornick again, founder and CEO of Pickaxe. If you're listening to this later on the podcast version, you can't read the screen. If you're watching right now, you can see his name. But if you're listening, that is the voice of Jeff Dornick here with Lakey Unleashed, the streamcast, the podcast, etc. Jeff, staying in the world of technology, you mentioned these bot farms. It's kind of getting fun and yet also scary, the capability of AI. And I'm sure that's affecting your world in having an online platform, how AI and what's real, what's not, what's a bot, etc. But there's a story out that I know you've commented on before. The FDA has basically given big pharma companies an AI hall pass. Basically, they're able to fast track drug approvals now, not by testing, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 year tests, but by doing AI models. Talk about this and what the heck are we doing with AI? And you're in the tech world. How do we make sure this doesn't get out of control, sir?
As long as we're going to continue to go down this world of AI, I don't think that there is any stopping it. I think, and that's unfortunately the problem, is that everybody's so invested in the development and implementation of artificial intelligence. I mean, for me, I endorsed RFK Jr. when he ran for president, but that was one of my big concerns, even when he was running for president, was his big push and leaning into AI. And I think specifically when we're dealing with like this FDA approval process, for people that don't know, what they're doing is they're actually eliminating animal trials. And Rand Paul was behind this, and RFK Jr. was also supporting this. They're eliminating animal trials and animal testing. And what they're going to be doing instead is they're going to be implementing AI simulated trials. And so what they'll do is they'll program artificial intelligence in order to run these trials to take a hypothetical look at how this should play out in human beings, and then they can then get the stamp of approval. Right now, then they would then go to human trials. The ultimate goal, though, is to make it to where they don't even have to do trials. They can fast track everything, and what they're going to say is like, look, we simulated 20, 30, 50 years down the road, so that way we could see, are there going to be long-term effects? Are we going to do all of this? Well, here's the problem. We just saw a few weeks ago, Grok went insane and started pushing, pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler, propaganda pieces and, all that kind of stuff. And that was just like a minor little tweak that they did in the algorithms. Imagine the kinds of tweaks that you can do when it comes to our health. Can we really trust that AI is going to be taking a look at every single possible scenario that we could be looking at? Now, we can make the argument that Trump and RFK Jr. are going to hold it accountable. You can make the argument that they're not going to allow big pharma to influence the algorithms and all of that when it comes to the testing for these simulated tests using artificial intelligence. But what happens if Gavin Newsom wins in 2028? What happens when it's the next president that comes in and maybe they're not as anti big pharma and they're like, oh, we're going to come up here, shake your hand, and big pharma, you tell us what you want in this testing. Yeah. Then it takes all these little minor tweaks, and then they can just fast track anything. And we will have no real world testing and no real world results. And also, the thing to remember as well, AI is only as good as it was programmed, and AI is only as good as its database. And so when we're looking at it specifically when it comes to these simulated trials, like what they're looking at is aggregated averages of what a human being should be. But as we all know, every single human being is different. Every single human being has a different set of genetics. Every single human being has a different medical history, different chronic disease, different issues, different environment, the whole deal. So there's so many different variables that you cannot you cannot factor everything into a database and artificial intelligence if we're going to be doing these simulations. So for me, it's very dangerous that we're now relying on AI, and to me the trend is heading towards eliminating all trials except for simulated AI trials, which is going to be catastrophic to our health moving forward.
Again, the voice of Jeff Dornick. We'll talk about his book here in just a moment. It's called Following the Leader. He's also the founder and CEO of Pickaxe. You can find that social media app at pickaxe.com. Search for it, look for it. You might want to get on that, pickaxe.com. Here's on this social media, this AI story. This is perspective for all of the listeners out there. Big tech has spent about $155 billion on AI this year. We're 8 months into the year, 7, 8 months into the year. I already spent $155 billion. That is more than the United States government has spent on education, jobs, and social services so far this year. It is there's a lot of money going into this, Jeff, and where money goes, you have who's influencing the money, who's controlling the money, who's driving the money. That's a lot of money, and we're and just that perspective of spending more than the government has spent on education, jobs, and social services. That's frightening. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, but the thing that we have to remember is that these big tech companies, they see the end game. The end game is whoever has the best AI, when the time comes, will basically rule the world. Like, and that's not even just being conspiratorial. Like, we're heading into a world where these tech companies are going to have more power over our lives than our own government, and that to me is very terrifying because we're supposed to be a self-governed society. Clearly, obviously, we're not because of the way that they've set up our governmental structure. We need to bring it back to that. But imagine you have somebody who's not beholden to anybody. They're not beholden. Like Elon Musk is not beholden to me. He has a private company. He can basically do whatever he wants. And we're heading into this world to where they're going to have more power over our day-to-day lives than the federal government. I mean, you look at what they're developing with XAI and Elon Musk's artificial intelligence companies. Like, they're developing robots that are going to be fueled and run by artificial intelligence. He's talking about in the next handful of years, there's going to be a billion of his cyborg robots in on this planet. Basically, what they're going to be replacing our babysitters, replacing our teachers, replacing our doctors, replacing basically anything and everything. And they're talking about over the next 10 years, both Bill Gates has talked about this, Elon Musk has talked about this, Sam Altman has talked about this, where AI is going to be replacing all of our jobs, not just certain jobs. All of our jobs. There's going to be no more need for human beings to be in the workforce. And so when we're looking at how much money that they are investing into artificial intelligence, it's because they see the end game. Whoever has the biggest, best AI will rule the world. And then also on top of that, then there's a huge financial incentive as well, because then they can start getting, they can get the government contracts. Here's how lucrative it is. Okay. So Amazon and AWS just gave the United States government a billion, again, with a B, $1 billion coupon to use for their servers and artificial intelligence. $1 billion coupon for the federal government to use. You're looking at what Meta's doing. Meta invested $65 billion just into developing artificial intelligence for the purpose of replacing human beings as content creators, to have artificial intelligence generated content creators. Why? Because then they can control the narrative. They can control what's actually being said. They're never going to have to censor because they're the ones that control what these bots basically say as influencers. And as evidence of this, one of the fastest growing Instagram accounts right now is an AI generated content creator. And it's wild when we're actually looking at this, but it all comes down to power and money. And the problem that we're having right now is the Trump administration. I voted for them, I support them, but also at the same time, they are fast tracking this AI stuff. And you could say they're gonna keep things in check while they're in office. But again, like I asked before, what happens when they get out of office? That's when things are going to go haywire. And I think we're getting so close to the cliff. I don't know if we can pull it back from that perspective.
That was my next question: is how do we pull us back from the cliff? And you just kind of answered that, because it's spinning so quickly. We're 10, 15 years or so into social media, roughly, maybe 20 years, and the government still hasn't figured out. We still haven't figured out the boundaries of social media. They're still working on that one. And while we're still trying to figure out whether Facebook and Twitter conspired with the government on the Hunter Biden laptop, we haven't rectified that situation. While we're still spinning around on these old stories, AI is moving, and we're drinking from a fire hydrant, and we hadn't figured out the previous problem. Is there a solution, Jeff, that you would propose if you were advising the ear holes of Donald Trump? What would you tell him?
I would say, like, so if the government's going to implement AI, it should be for like data collection and data analysis and things like that. It should not be making any decisions whatsoever, because then you're taking out the human element and the accountability side of things. Like, so like, AI is going to begin to start making decisions about our day-to-day lives on a variety of issues, because they're trying to streamline things and be more efficient. But the problem is like, okay, so who's held accountable if it violates my constitutional rights by making a decision that goes against me? Because they'll just blame, oh, it was a glitch, sorry, there's nothing we can really do. Whereas if it was a human being that rubber stamped something, then you can hold them accountable. They could lose their job, you could sue them, you could, there's all different kinds of things that you can do. There's no check and balance when it comes to this whole AI world. But then also, what we're seeing is we're seeing that they're deregulating, and the Trump executive orders basically are pushing towards deregulating artificial intelligence, fast tracking everything, and the same time that these tech CEOs are saying that they are going to replace human beings in the workforce. For me, what we need to figure out as human beings is, number one, how do we unplug ourselves from artificial intelligence? How do we have a human-centered job? How do we have a human-centered community? We need to start gathering together now, figuring out how do we become self-sufficient? How do we live outside of that mainstream ecosystem? Because that's what we're gonna have to figure out. I had a really good conversation a couple months ago with Nicole Shanahan about this very thing. How do we separate from artificial intelligence? And I think that there are opportunities. For example, like with our social media platform, it's a very human-centered social media platform. We're not integrating chatbots and ways that you can streamline things. I want to hear what you have to say, and pretty soon we're probably going to be the only social media platform that actually pushes that. So it'll create this new space for human beings as opposed to robots. But then we're also gonna have to figure out, how do we self-support ourselves when it comes to food? How do we grow our own food? How do we have communities where we support each other and we help each other and not rely on robots and AI? Because the robots and AI, they're going to give us access to a lot of information. They're going to replace a lot of jobs and a lot of tasks that we don't want to do. But it's also going to take away our critical thinking skills. It's going to take away our ability to grow and learn from our mistakes and all of that. So we need to be very human-centered. I don't necessarily think that the government's going to stop this, because the more AI, the more power that they have. But then for us as the individual, that's where we have to figure out, how can we unplug ourselves in this scenario from AI and this feature of technology, so that way we can still be human in the way that God created us.
You know, it's scary. Jeff Dornick, my guest, I talk about your book and the one time push of pickaxe, but we think of the Hunter Biden laptop and how social media squelched that and search engines squelched that. That's nothing compared to if the government decides that they want to squelch a story or boost a story for whatever reason, like they did with the Hunter Biden laptop. And think how easily the social media platforms and the web platforms, the Silicon Valley platforms, caved to the Hunter Biden story and censorship of that. You put AI behind that, and that makes the social media stuff with Hunter Biden look like child's play.
Yeah, well, and there's a really good example of this. I just last week I had he's actually a lifelong Democrat, a leftist political cartoonist, Ted Rall, on my show, and he's actually on Pickaxe, and you guys can follow him. He's great, but you know, it's interesting. He's been very critical of the Democrat Party, even though he's still, you know, a pretty progressive guy. But he's also been openly critical of ChatGPT and OpenAI and some of the tactics that they do and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, he wrote an article that was in a mainstream media outlet. I forget which one. I forget, it was like the New York Times or something like that. That was critical of OpenAI. And so how did OpenAI do? They deleted him from their database. So and they actually banned him from ChatGPT. And you're like, okay, you know, the private company, they can do what they want. Well, here's the thing. I went to go do some research on Ted Rall, and I typed his name into ChatGPT, and I'm like, you know, give me the bio of Ted Rall and all that kind of stuff. It would start writing his name, Ted Rall, and it would stop and say, this is a violation of our terms and conditions. Basically, you're not allowed to talk about this guy. And I'm like, this guy, super nice guys, whatever, like they literally delete him from existence. Think about this. And on top of that, OpenAI has government contracts with our own federal government. Yeah. So it is that database and this OpenAI that they generated, this large language model that's now being contracted with the federal government. Is he depersoned within the federal government when this AI is being used for the federal government? Think about how dangerous that is. We talk about central bank digital currencies and their ability to shut off our money. What if they just unhuman us? What if they just deperson us from using AI? Like, then literally you just start typing in your name. It's not even going to acknowledge that you exist. Think about how crazy that is.
Jeff Dornick, folks want to get onto Pickaxe, explain the process. I'm sure it's a quite simple process, but give everybody the best way to go about signing up with Pickaxe.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys just go to pickaxe.com, pickax.com. So right now we are web-based. You guys can sign up, set up your account just like you would any other social media platform. We're going to be dropping our iOS and Android app here in the next few weeks. We're in the final phases of developing that. So then that way you could either, you know, get it in the App Store or you can do it on the website as well. But then what some of the other really cool things that we've got, you know, we have free verification. So then that way you guys can get verified, get your blue check mark. It's absolutely free. We just want to make sure that you're a human being. That way we can kind of weed out the bots and the anonymous trolls and all that kind of stuff. And then we also have a content creator program that you can apply for, where you can actually monetize your content. We've got a variety of ways that you can do that, whether you put stuff behind a paywall. We have a rev share. We have the ability for you to earn direct revenue off of ads that are shown on your content. We got a bunch of really cool things from that standpoint, but we're also very heavily integrated into Rumble. And so that way Rumble videos are playable in the newsfeed, but then also we have a beta feature that's available to creators that we're eventually going to expand out to everybody. You can actually connect your Rumble channel to your Pickaxe account, and it'll automatically post your shows and your videos and your live streams in real time on the platform without you having to copy and paste. And then so we're getting a lot of Rumble channels that are coming over to Pickaxe just for that one thing as well. So, but if you guys are interested, you guys can go over to pickaxe.com. You guys can follow me. We've got Children's Health Defense on there. We got Naomi Wolf. We got Matt Couch and Vandersteel, SGT Report, Red Pill 78. We got a whole bunch of awesome people from a whole bunch of different backgrounds that you guys can check out over at Pickaxe.
You've also written a couple of books in your life, but your newest book is called Following the Leader. Plug away, sir. Following the Leader. I'm following your lead. Go.
Yeah, definitely. It's basically taking a look at the cult of personality, and you taking a self-reflective look and see, am I being propagandized? Why do I believe what I believe? And do I believe it because I believe it, or do I believe it because an intelligence agency told me to believe it through a variety of means? And so we're actually going to dive into some of the cults and the cult tactics from the past, also how the intelligence agencies used MK Ultra and brainwashing techniques, but how they actually tested that out in a lot of these cults, going back 50, 60 years even. And then now they're applying it on a mass scale. So we're taking a look at all of that, and then ending with this self-reflective look on what is my worldview? Why do I believe what I believe? How do I know that it's true? And then encouraging people to kind of, check out from this whole propaganda machine that everybody finds themselves in. And if you think that just because I'm a conservative, I'm not being brainwashed, you are. Everybody is on both sides of the aisle. You need to figure out who I am, what I believe, and figure out your own worldview and not just follow the leader.
Jeff Dornick, pickaxe.com. The name of the book, Following the Leader. I'm guessing it's available on Amazon if you haven't been deplatformed, sir.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, as well as my website, jeffdornick.com. That's the best place to get it, and I'll sign all the copies if you get it on my website.
I kept you overtime, Jeff. I appreciate it. Pickaxe.com. Thank you very much, Jeff Dornick. CEO and founder, in the name of the book, Following the Leader, jeffdornick.com. I'm not sure how long I was supposed to keep him, but I'm pretty sure we went way overtime. We just enjoyed the conversation. Sorry about that, Jeff. Hey, everybody, good to have you here. To tell you a crazy story about AI real quick. I didn't want to, I knew I needed to get Jeff out of here, but there was recently they put out some music. I had some AI platform create music, and they did a listener test in radio, and they played the music to hundreds of people. Say, hey, pick your top song, which should go to the playlist. And some of the top songs that were chosen by the listeners going, that's a fantastic song. That's going to be a big hit. They were AI songs. It wasn't a real band. It was all just computer AI generated, and the songs that were created, artistry created by real humans, the real humans said, that's lower on the list. We like this song. And yeah, that wasn't a real song. It was a song, but it was not a real person, a real artist, a real band. And that is how you got to be careful with this AI thing. I appreciate Jeff coming on the program. And again, thanks, Jeff, if you're watching, coming on. I know you stayed a little bit longer. Maybe he was expecting to stay that long. I don't know. Actually, I had him until 9 o'clock, but on my schedule, he wasn't here till 8:45. So he jumped in early. So maybe he just jumped in early and I didn't keep him late. Let's look at it like that, Delilah. Don't blame me. Don't point fingers at me. Don't you do it. Yeah, we're going to see a paycheck. Remember that? Paycheck game? Don't play that game. All right, good to have you here on the program. Jimmy is my name. Pleasure to be here. We had a question of the day going on. What age should you let your kids have a cell phone? At which age should they be on social media? Stacy says, I don't mind a child having a phone if is that the internet, social media that needs to be monitored. Maybe monitored until 18. I know I typed one letter off at work and I was on a porn-looking site accidentally. You got to be careful too. They warned us in school when the internet first came out that if you're going to look for the White House, you want to make sure you say .gov. I don't know if it's .org or .com, but the White House domain name outside of .gov was hijacked. Maybe it still is. I don't know. It was hijacked by a porn site, and that's who registered it. So kids were in school on their, whatever websites are going. They're like, I'm going to look up the White House. They went to whitehouse.com to whatever, and they were on an explicit porn site. Not sure if that's still the case. Anyway, what age do you give what I think the most interesting part of it, Rich says this, he's on Facebook. He says, we're using social media and AI as an escape from reality. It can be abused just like a drug. We need to use it as a tool, but be able to pull away from it and live with it, and be able to live without it probably as well. So good points, but it's hard to do. It really is hard to do. Because it's so easy and so convenient to use. And my son, this was before this ChatGPT was just getting started. And they were starting to use it a little bit in school, not as prolifically as I'm sure they do now. But I have to say that it was interesting when he was of this age. I said, do you think kids should not have cell phones or social media until about they're 16? And I forgot how I phrased the question. And he was right about that age or just past it. And he goes, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Which made me kind of feel bad as a parent going, well, shoot, I gave him a cell phone too early. Maybe I should have held back. But now we know better. We all know better now. I did read of a college professor or some universities, I don't know if it's a general platform, that they are testing, and somehow the way you have to respond, they will know if you have to respond in a block, and there's a monitor on there that can tell them, I have to find the story again, that can tell them, oh, that was cut and pasted. That was cut and pasted from AI. You're supposed to type your answer right in that box, and it's an online form. And the university has figured out how that they can say, edits and things like that. They're able to say, hey, this was all AI generated. And I think the university is going to probably need to get a grip on that, because can you imagine how many kids might be passing medical school right now, or law school, or some highly skilled profession, and they passed it not because they were great doctors or something. They passed it because they were on the AI all the time. So anyway, it's a great tool, but it's very dangerous. Great perspective from Jeff Dornick. All right, Sherry Cree. I want to remind you about Sherry Cree. Speaking of human beings, she's a fantastic one. When it comes to real estate and selling a house, buying a house. If you're like me, I go to my mailbox and you get ads in the mail from real estate people. Some people spend a lot of high dollar marketing money. It looks like a magazine has come in at the very end. It was about decorating, and it's a realtor that wants my business. And you can find some really good realtors, but you can also find some that you're like, well, I shouldn't have done that. Listen, use somebody that's verified, Lakey verified. Sherry Cree is Lakey verified. And what I mean by that is she's a great human. First of all, she knows the business of real estate in and out. You're going to get the right pricing on your home, the right timing. She can come up with a schedule. When's a good time? When's a bad time? We're going to start talking to Sherry here next week and on a weekly basis, because I really want you to get to know her, and I really want you to give her some business because it's easy to get burned in the real estate market. It's easy to make a wrong decision. And, it's not like a decision you can go back to the return counter at Target and say, I'd like to return this box of whatever. No, these are like, you're in, and you're like, oh, shoot. Listen, talk about the market. Talk about what will happen with interest rates, the pricing of your home if you're trying to sell. If you want more money for your home, you might want to wait a little bit longer before you list it, because when the interest rates come down, activity will pick up. I mean, there's just some strategery in this that Sherry will kind of give that outside perspective, and she'll strategize with you. And I make that word up, but she will. Because here's the point. Everything that she does as your realtor, she's doing it with the paradigm in mind that she's hoping and working to earn the right to, and the privilege to be your realtor for life. So you can get burned into the real estate world, make the wrong decision, move the wrong neighborhood. You ever done this? Well, if I would have waited 3 more months, we'll talk about all those strategies. And listen, maybe you're not ready to move now. Maybe it's early 2026. You're heading towards the fall of the year here. It's August. You don't want to be worry about cold weather and the Christmas vacations and open houses. Well, maybe you want to gear up for January. Now's not too late to do that. Homeswithsherry.com. That's your website. Portion of her proceeds, she'll always donate to that to the charity of your choice. If you're a veteran, first responder, military folks, listen, she's going to give you a discount in what she takes. She wants to help you have a real estate dream come true, and she's just top tier, and you need to reach out to her. If you're in that I-25 corridor in Colorado, where we're located at, I know a lot of you listen around the country. We appreciate that as well. But homeswithsherry.com, I-25, Fort Collins, head on down Firestone, Berthoud, Loveland, you can get the idea. Head on down to Broomfield, head on down to Thornton, head on down to Westminster, head on down to Denver, head on down to Park Meadows area, the Highlands Ranch, Aurora, Parker, all of these places. She can help you in real estate, and she will help you. You just got to reach out to her. Homeswithsherry.com, Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Be sure to tell her that you heard Jimmy Lakey talking about her on the program, homeswithsherry.com. All right. Everybody got plans for the weekend this weekend? Everybody got big plans? I think producer Chad and I are going to meet up here in a little bit. One of our favorite establishments has some live blues music tonight, Delta blues music, and I think we're going to meet there and perhaps enjoy a cigar and maybe a beverage and listen to some blues. I think that's on the docket for producer Chad and I. He's got the kitchen pass, and I make my own rules. So, yeah, it's all good. I think that's on my plan. I hope you have a great weekend, everybody. If you want to follow us over the weekend, don't forget social media, facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. If you're on Instagram, Twitter, any other place outside of Facebook, it's usually just my name, Jimmy Lakey. Follow us on Rumble. We need to do better at Rumble, and all of you Rumblers out there, you've been very quiet. I'm going to come over there. I'm going to nurture this audience. We got new followers. I get notifications every day, new followers. Maybe we will also link up to on the pickaxe soon as well and do that. Scott just asked a question. Doug Giles, I know it's Friday and you all want Doug. Doug's busy today. Doug will be back next week. Sorry, I don't mean to offend any of you. I always love that. I always love that. And I love it that you love the guests we have. Laura Carno, Jay Ratliff. These are people that have been coming on the program with me for many years, even back in the terrestrial radio days. And if they're off. But I give you a hint on Doug. Doug's a very busy guy. And Doug, I laugh. I told producer Chad in our pre-show meeting bright and early this morning when we were going over the program, I said, Doug's been on 2 or 3 weeks in a row. I bet Doug's busy today. And sure enough, I opened up and I had a message waiting for Doug. I'm traveling this week or today. I have to take a rain check. And so Doug's usually here at this time. We'll go ahead and promo Doug, DougGiles.org. By the way, producer Chad bought the book Hunting of the Bible from Doug Giles and says it's a really good read. So producer Chad, this is the producer Chad that has been known to do urban hunting. Let me tell you, producer Chad is a fantastic cook, a chef, and he's also a great gardener. But let me tell you, if you're a little bunny foo-foo hopping through the backyard of producer Chad and you're a rabbit, bunny foo-foo, yeah, you're a pesky wabbit. And you're not, producer Chad walks around his backyard looking like Elmer Fudd with a shotgun, and he takes care of those rabbits. Let me tell you that. Yeah. All right. Here we go. All right. Jim wants a promo here. Promo, Jim, let's give it to him. Yeah. Car show at Timberline Church in Fort Collins tomorrow morning. It's a fundraiser for supporting foster kids program. By the way, I need to do more, communication about foster care programs in America. One of the when I was on the terrestrial radio signal, I know we got to go and we got to do meme roulette. When I started learning about the foster care system, and I've thought about fostering kids, I don't think my heart could handle it. I don't. As a single dad, I was busy enough, but I thought about fostering. I thought about it, but I didn't know how I was going to fit it in with my schedule and travels and stuff. I didn't, but I remember I was recording or taking an interview when I was on the iHeart station for 10 years. And I learned that at the age of 18, literally you can be in the middle of high school at the age of 18, your foster family feeds you your Fruit Loops and say, hey, you turned 18 today, get out. And they can literally push you out of the house. Now, fortunately, a lot don't do that, but there are situations where they get 18, they have nothing. There's no safety net. And a lot of times these families that were in it for the money and not for the love of the kids and for the paycheck, they know that paycheck ends when that kid's 18. And so grab your breakfast. You have a couple of clothes in your room, go. Don't come home tonight. Foster kids in America and in Colorado are really an underserved population. So I need to pull some guests on that because I think most people don't understand that the foster kids. And I thought about fostering myself, and at first I thought my heart couldn't handle it because I foster to adopt, and then you find out you're not going to get the child, and that just break your heart right open. And it's tough enough taking care of all the kids I take care of in Africa. But then I looked at my schedule and I said, listen, I don't have backup. I'm the goalie and I'm the frontline defense here as a single pops. And I didn't have the backup to foster. But anyway, a great reminder, Jim. Tomorrow, if you're in Fort Collins, stop by the Timberline Church, and there's a fundraiser. It's a car show supporting foster kids program. Jim, I'm glad you brought that up. And again, study the foster care program. If your church is involved in foster care, I know my church is involved in it, trying to get kids out of foster care into adoptive homes. But listen, foster care program is very big need in America, and we should probably bring more attention to that. Because, yes, I like taking care of the kids in Africa, but I understand we have a lot of kids in America, many of them in the foster care program that need ample and huge amounts of help. All right, Friday, September the 5th. What are we, 4 weeks from today? 4 weeks from today, producer Chad and I will not be here. This will be dead air because we will be out at the Colorado National Golf Club. Right now, the golf tournament in 4 weeks from now, and we'll be an hour or so into the shotgun start. It's a fantastic event. Make sure you come out and play. You do not have to be a great golfer. A lot of folks just drive their golf carts around. I don't think some of them even hit a ball. It's very bizarre. But it's not a PGA qualifier. It's a lot of fun. It's the biggest fundraiser of the year that we have for my charity, Rivers Promise. RiversPromise.com, RiversPromise.org. And again, even if you're not a golfer, could you use this? Would you use this as an opportunity to make a donation? Maybe you want to be a hole sponsor, just sponsor a hole at the golf tournament. We'll put a sign up for you, your business. We have individuals that do that. We have people that donate in memory of someone. Someone has died, and they just want to recognize that person and to remember them on that day. There's a lot of ways to sponsor, but you can go to the RiversPromise.com, RiversPromise.org, and go to the event page, and you will see it. And we'll see you Friday, September 5th. We're 4 weeks from today. And Doug Giles won't be with us that day either because we won't be on. So just prepare your hearts for that, Scott. All right, I got to take a break or leave. But before we do, we're going to do the meme roulette. That's right, meme roulette section of the show where we scour the interwebs and we steal memes shamelessly. We steal them, and that just keeps producer Chad and I from having to put the effort in ourselves to produce memes. It's easier to steal than to do it ourselves. Believe me, we don't have time. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Oh, we stole this from the Babylon Bee. Trump has ordered census takers not to count anyone wearing a sombrero. That's cultural appropriation. You hear that? President Trump says we got to recount the census. The 2020 census, illegals were counted. And Trump tried to stop it, and the court said, no, you got to count the illegals. The criminals were counted. And some people say it's 4 to 5 seats in California alone that they wanted to count the illegals for because the population would have declined because so many people have got the hell out of that scum state run by scum Governor Gavin Newsom. It's a beautiful state, but the scum have run it and they've chased people out. And so the way they keep the congressional seats is because they counted illegals. Trump says we're doing a new census and the Commerce Department don't count people wearing a sombrero, or at least don't count people that are illegals. That'd be a good thing, right? I like that idea. A great meme by the Babylon Bee, though. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Oh, looky there. It's Barry Hussein Obama right there. My transfer of power to Trump was mostly peaceful. Other than the lying, the spying, disinformation, sabotage, and the Russian hoax, Barack Obama is slowly but surely falling out of the grace of history, I believe. And I believe he will be remembered as a corrupt and a soiled politician and treasonous and traitorous in many ways. And again, sometimes it takes a while for history to be written, but I think the history that is already happening with Barry Hussein Obama, just watch his influence in the election. When he's come out full-throated and endorsed candidates, even a Kamala Harris, even Barry Hussein and Big Mike can't get Kamala Harris over the finish line. His days of influence are waning, and I think that history will judge Barry Hussein Obama very, very harshly. And maybe history will also wonder why his Social Security number says that it was somebody that was born in like Pennsylvania. Just saying, look it up. I'm serious then. Yeah. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. There's Bill Gates. Bill Gates, who took 37 private jet trips to Epstein Island despite lacking a medical degree, having a high carbon footprint, and having had close ties with a child trafficker. He's still hailed by the media as a morally superior climate and virus expert. Bill Gates. That's why I switched to the company of Steve Jobs long ago. Just saying. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. This is purely visual. I'm trying to think of how to explain this to the podcast listeners. Monk A, Monk B, Monk C, Monk D, Monk F. You couldn't say monkey, okay? It's visual. Somebody get it? That means a stretch right there. That's a real stretch. That takes more explaining than I have time to do right there. My television screen just got big there. I'm handsome. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from? No one knows. Ellie Giroux, a medical doctor, says every animal in the wild eats its natural diet and thrives. No manual, no experts, no debates. Only humans need scientists, dietitians, doctors, and government guidelines to figure it all out. And somehow we've ended up fat, sick, and totally confused about food. Well done, humans. Well done. Well said. Round and around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from? No one knows. Steve Byrne, great comedian, says Kamala Harris's new book avail as an audiobook. It comes in the slurred black scent or Jamaican. He said it. I didn't say that. Well, yeah, Kamala speaks sometimes with a black scent and sometimes with a Jamaican scent. It's Steve Burns. Don't blame me. He's made the comment. Round and around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from? No one knows. Donald Trump gerrymanders the United States and now includes Canada. It's an all-red map signed by Donald. How do you like that? Gerrymanders. Yeah, have you noticed this gerrymandering conversation? This was showed down the state of Texas. How many states were learning that 35, 40% of the populace votes Republican, and yet the gerrymanderers have never, I think Connecticut, Massachusetts, there's no district that was drawn to send a Republican to Congress. They have gerrymandered the districts so much in these corrupt, blue, devilish, satanic states. They've gerrymandered it so much that even though 35, 40% are registered Republicans, they won't draw any congressional district that would represent any red. And so some states like Massachusetts and other states have gerrymandered it so much. And so I think that's a great thing about this gerrymandered conversation in Texas, the Texas Showdown, is we're realizing how many states are corrupt and how many of these states have been playing the gerrymandering game for a long, long time. Ready? Let's see if there's any more. Round and around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from? No one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, we have milked the meme machine dry on National Pickleball Day, and also the 75th anniversary of Whataburger. So go do yourself a favor. I'd go play some pickleball if I were you, and if you can, go eat some Whataburger. I'm sure they got some great specials on the 75th anniversary. And Whataburger, if you're watching, two things. Number one, we'd love to have you sponsor. It could be for years before Rush Limbaugh passed, when I got hired by, at the time, Clear Channel, and it became iHeart. When I was for a few years the opening act in Colorado on the station I was on for Rush Limbaugh. I did a 4-hour show leading into Rush Limbaugh. That was my job, to build the audience for Rush. And by the way, sometimes my numbers were better. Nevertheless, I was honored to do that. That was like the highlight. Once I got to be on the station that aired Rush, and I was the opening act for Rush, that was like the highlight. I was ready to quit radio then. I was done. I chalked that one up. I was done. Open for Buck Sexton and Clay Travis or whatever their names are. Who cares? Say Hannity, love you, Sean, but no. But when I was the opening act for Rush, that was a big, big deal. I loved it. And then after that, I should have just left. I've checked that off my resume. Well, talk about great thrills. Producer Chad, can you imagine how hard it would be to contain my joy? If right behind me, where my charity is at, if we could blend in some Whataburger logos as a sponsor. Whataburger, if you're watching, I'd love a sponsor. We may not even charge you. Just ship me Whataburgers all the time. They probably get cold, though, right? Because we're far away. We'll take money. I'll go fly and buy my own Whataburgers. Anyway, just saying. That'd be big. The W back there behind me. Whoo, bless my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to go. It's Lakey. Follow us on the social media. Go register for the golf tournament. If you're not doing donating to the charity or registering the golf tournament, Jesus is not happy. I can't speak for Jesus today. But yeah, don't make a donation. It's Friday. Some of you get paid. If you can help us out with the charity cause, do it in honor of the golf tournament. Go sponsor the golf tournament. $35 feeds a kid for a month in Africa. Come on, 1 month? $30. I'm sorry, not $35. $30 feeds a kid 2 meals a day. How about 1 meal? Go donate, riverspromise.org. 65 gives them the food and sends them to school. 1 month? 65? golf, September the 5th. I am Jimmy Lakey. Have a great weekend. May God bless you. May God bless America. God bless Sherry Cree. God bless everybody out there. Yeah. Peace. Jimmy Lakey. I'm out of here.